I hate this place.
I don't hate this place. I think I don't hate this place.
Why not?
Well, why do you hate it?
I've been through it. You've been through it. You was made to work like a mule here. You've been beaten here. You've been laughed at some and then. Come on, Gabe. I've seen you a weepin' here.
True enough, Will, but despite all that, there's something about this place I like. I like tending the animals, I like working with my hands, but I don't always like the beatings or the drudgery hard work.
Go on. You're daft.
No, Will. Something as simple as the dust. Something as common as the dust. Something as low as the dust. As shining and as sparkling reminds me that no matter what happens to me, the simple daily things don't end. I know I'm going to get by no matter what Brutus does or says.
As your master, you don't get a lot of choice about what he says or does. He runs us in the way he likes, and I seen him be a harsher ways to you, Gabe. You'll not deny.
Right, Will, but my pop was paid handsome to apprentice me to him, and who knows? I'll have more chances as an apprentice to a merchant than I ever would have as a commoner to Lord Snowbridge. My pop been his for all his life, and his pop and his pop.
You've picked up all this wisdom in 10 long years of life, have you? Gabe, I'm afraid you're not the brightest star in them heavens.
All I know is I'm not working fields and I'm not trailing the roadward end of an ox. I'm out in the world, more or less, and I've more prospect than any of my youngest who are still at home with my papa and my arm.
Is this life for you then, Gabe?
Yes, if you please. Tend the little trees in Brutus's orchard, dung them in the summer, set out the pots in the late fall, watch them bloom in the spring.
And picking apples till your back start to crack.
But the smell in the spring, Will.
And the inn, carrying warmers and tankards, taking plates, carrying scraps to the dogs out back. And the stable, feeding the animals.
Actually, I like feeding the horses of the travelers and listening to their stories. There's so much of the world in what they say.
Whatever, boy. All I have to say is you must be hefting a tankard yourself early in the day to think that this is interesting or rewarding. What are you up to now?
That man that came into the inn this afternoon, he asked me special to come out and look after his steed. He said that, called his horse his steed.
Indeed.
Said he needed food and water and that he'd be bound for a halfpenny for a rub-down.
Don't let Brutus hear you. Or have you doing that rub-down and that there fine steed in his pocket will hold your measly halfpenny stead of yours.
Right, Will. I just finished. Give him a fine curry. He is gannet. Must be 16 or 17 hands high and beautiful.
Aye, that he is. We'll be back at work in a proper pace if you know what's good for you. I'm for the inn now, and getting a bit to eat before the field has come to table. You hasten on there.
Will.
So, you've been hard at it? Got Heimdall fed and groomed?
Aye, my lord. He's watered, fed, and well curried. Is there anything else, my lord?
What have you got there?
Nothing of my concern, I'm sure. I'll just be putting it down and getting on about my work, if it pleases you, my lord.
Nothing would please me more, my young friend, than to see you back at your work. Can you forget what you've seen there just then?
Aye, my lord, that I can. I've got a closed mouth, and I've a mind to control what I have, and I haven't seen when I choose it.
I'll wager you do, young innkeeper. But never mind your control. Are you a-wondering whence that shield?
'Tis your shield and your crest, good sir?
'Tis. What of blazonry, then? What do you make of the markings?
'Tis a fine shield. I know a little about the markings, because I hear Will and the other boys from Doubleside talking over the nights as come through here.
And of these markings, do you recognize any or know the charges?
A blazon of royal lineage?
And the ordinaries and hues?
Well, it's a black sable background with a ghoul's red chevron. These three of them kind of crosses. What are they? Salem cross. On the chevron here, 3 black roses with berries and leaves. Them berries and leaves is called seeded and bobbed.
Excellent. You've the makings of a squire in you. Seeded and barbed of the third means the berries and leaves are the third color used in the blazon to describe the crest.
Are you royal then?
Are you presuming that this is my crest on the shield?
Sorry, my lord. Are you a knight then? Are you with the soldiers of the realm or the vicar's lot?
The vicar's lot, then, I expect, good lad. And did you mean what you said about keeping what you see, and can you control that close mouth of yours?
Aye, my lord, that I can.
Well, then I'll share with you a story. We shan't make you tarry too long, lest the innkeeper question your good intentions.
No, my lord, and many thanks for your concern.
Now, my name is Crittenden. My father is the 9th Earl Crittenden, of a manor far north seaward from here. Now, close mouth lad, you're certain. I would be the 10th Earl Crittenden, sovereign over that same estate and title. What do you know of the war?
The vicar's lot and the bishop's lot are going to take on the infidels. I know that, and we're going to win. Because, well, the mass is being warred against as infidels.
No doubt. Well, I'll share with you my story on peril of my life, even though it is only a story. A story with nothing of the real about it. A story of the holy war with the infidels that the, how did you put it? The vicar's lot are taking up. Now imagine that there are people here, and imagine that there are people here. You ever been abroad from this place?
Never set foot beyond Doubleside.
And a fine village it is, young sir. Now, the people here believe on one thing, and the people here believe on another thing. Now imagine, it's just a story then, a fancy story, remember. But imagine that one of the men up here, we'll call this our country, didn't know what to think as he was growing up here. He was rich, educated, heir to a title, noble birth. But he renounced his noble birth and became a monk, sort of like a vicar, only he lived in a monastery.
A monstrosity?
He lived in a large church, sort of like a cathedral with lots of others like him. And he studied God's holy word, and he worked for the bishop. But then these people began to fight with these people because they didn't believe the same thing.
So who was as dumb as was right?
So this man, who would be part of the royal lineage, who had a title, and who worked for the bishop, didn't know what to think. Now imagine that this man became a knight. He wanted to find out for himself what the battle was about and who was right. So this imaginary knight doesn't want people to know that he's this special person with the royal background and the training like the bishops. So he changes, just a little. He doesn't tell people that his name is Davenport. He tells them that it's something more like mine, like Crittenden. He stays away from the battle regiments where people from his own estate might recognize him. And he travels under a coat of arms that's slightly different than his own. Say a coat that has roses that are seeded and barbed, rather than plain roses. And that way he would be able to explain the difference if anyone found out who he really was.
Like, what's the word? Disguise?
Now this man was trained by the church in the ways of the church. You know any of the ways of the church, lad?
The vicar and his lot are always praying, and such I believe. He's going to get the whole parish into heaven, I'll be bound.
I'll be bound as well. Heaven, it is. And I'm sure the vicar's always praying and such. Well, this man was trained by the church, and after going off as a knight to find out for himself what the battle was about, he couldn't decide.
But, my lord, you said that those folks down there believe something different. Wasn't they wrong then?
Well, lad, you got a name, boy.
Gabriel, like the angel the vicar once said. Only, I don't know which angel.
Well, Gabriel, those folk up there were like us, and they believed something, and they believed they were right. But the religious man who became a knight found out that the folks down here believed something, and they believed that they were right. Now the religious man who became a knight, and who worked for the church and the bishop, needed sometimes to pray. When he did this, he didn't want anyone to know that he was part of the battle with the infidels. I mean, part of the battle with the folk down here. So when he wasn't in the battlefields trying to do what was right and trying to figure out what was right, he would sometimes stop by an inn. He'd put his shield and his battle armor in a place where no one would find them, and he would spend time at this inn praying. He'd sometimes stay a full fortnight praying before going back to his battle charge.
And that man would talk to God at some inn?
And now, young sir, I'm going to retire, for I have some praying to do myself, and I have to travel many leagues tomorrow.
But, my lord, wasn't that you in the story? That man just then?
Young man, it was just a story. About fighting, and about right and wrong.
My lord, knight, how do we know who is as right and who is as wrong? If the vicar can't tell us, who then?
Judgment. 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 Them as is right, a young philosopher? Well, I don't know for certain, but I'll tell you what I do know for certain. I mightn't know precisely what is right, but different, just different, doesn't make wrong.
Kind knight, sir, my lord, in your imaginary story, how was them roses on the fate shield? You know, the one as was like the real one, but a little different.
Oh, I forget what I said just then as I was telling you this story. Good night, lad. The blazoned Davenport on a chevron, 3 roses of the field, seated and bobbed of the third, in azure blue, to symbolize loyalty